again to Postcard, and we keep saying he's not happy, but he's not, because he can only go out of his door for 100 meters, and then he's banned. And they've locked you down properly, haven't they?
Lock me down, lock me down. I broke my toe. I've been that locked down. The house has just become like this cell, this 6-foot cell where I'd sit here like a big Buddha in a living hell. Most people will get that as a Bob Dylan line, you know. Yeah. And and that's it. And yeah, I could go out my front door.
Yeah.
And I can go for 100 meters. Then I've got to turn back and come back in. I can go a bit further if I've got a dog. But actually...
Why?
Because dog's got 4 legs, it has to go further.
Oh, yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
Yeah. And I can go to my dustbin, because that's 100 meters away.
Yeah.
But I fill that with bottles.
What, can you go shopping?
You can go shopping. Now, here's the rules, right? Oh, sorry, I made my camera wobble. Here's the rules. If you're over 60, which I'm not, I can go shopping. Pardon?
Close.
Which I can go shopping between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m.
Yes.
No, 11 a.m., which actually just means that there's no things for your false teeth if you've got any, and there's no synaptogen, and nothing for old people left. All the old people.
Leigh, you do not get up till 11 o'clock in the morning, so that's out as well.
Well, I know, that's it. That's a good job, because I'm under 60, because then I can go shopping, and I don't want synaptogen and stuff for your false teeth, so I can buy anything I want. So I just buy all the wine. I just panic buy wine. That's all I do, wine. And cheese.
And cheese. Ah, well, aphrodisiac. We won't go there. We'll move straight from an aphrodisiac to Donald Trump.
Donald
Come
Trump.
on.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public announcement.
Well, I've had another report today that the date to watch out for some startling news, not being confirmed, but put the 6th of January in your diary.
Right. I will finish my public announcement here. Rodney and I had a conversation before we did this show where we have promised not to fall out, not to hate each other, and not to never be friends again. We are diametrically opposed on this conversation. Yeah. Can you hear Rodney?
Well, I had my fingers crossed then. I didn't tell you that, did I? Right. Now, no, I'm going to say as a pro-Trumper, that's not the case, because I think everybody recognises that Donald does shoot his mouth off on 1 or 2 occasions, and he doesn't do anybody any favours. But there are certain things that are very much, I almost say, undeniable. 2 things that are fundamental to the Trump organization and where he is and what he's doing. Now, the first one is that it's extremely suspicious that the virus was attacked 2 days after the 3rd of November when it was the election. In other words, it's pretty convincing that they didn't allow the drug companies, or they prevented the drug companies, I'll say who they are in a minute, from announcing that and doing Donald a lot of good by finding the miracle cure. Now, it is very significant because Mr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci, who is the chief medical officer over there in the States, said right at the beginning of this, we will do our best to get a vaccine, but don't hold your breath. It's going to be at least 18 months. The Donald, meanwhile, said, I'm a businessman. I'll do it within a year. And he did. Point number 1, that's important.
Yeah.
Point number 2, the election. Now, the election, was bizarre in the extreme. Now, we know everybody is conspiracists in all this. They're saying things they can't prove, or are they? When you look at the big night when Trump was doing what he said he was, getting a landslide, suddenly, when all the postal votes were counted or not counted, it reversed and Biden got in. Now, those two things alone can be proved and are fundamental to what's happening. So that's why I say, don't hold your breath either. It may not happen on day 6, but something significant's going to happen.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, a remarkable coincidence could also be thrown into the coronavirus debacle over when it was announced and when the drugs companies announced everything. Drop the word remarkable, just have a coincidence. What other countries were announcing their way out of this dramatic virus situation at that time? Did the rest of the world not do it? Why would companies do this? You see, the problem is with Trump. Very simply, why is he the man? Everybody from the media to the press to the politicians to other companies to social media, why did they all turn against him? Why didn't they turn against anybody else? Why is it him? Is he just a bit paranoid, really? Really, when you think, now let's be fair to him as a man, he's certainly been one of the most controversial presidents in history. And actually, he has the dubious honour of being the 3rd commander-in-chief to be impeached. He escaped the impeachment, but he was impeached as he went ahead in the elections. He's done good things, there's no doubt about it.
That impeachment, by the way, Leigh, before you move on, that impeachment has absolutely been proved false.
That's right. I said that. Yeah, I said that. It was cancelled. That's fine. But it is a fact that certainly his tax affairs haven't been cleared up and all that kind of thing. What are his great accomplishments? He reorganised the court system, didn't he? And that was very controversial, but seems to have worked. Now, what grabs me there is the fact that if he had the time to do that, to reorganise the court system, because he knew there was things wrong with it, then if he knew that things were wrong with the election before this election that he palpably lost, why didn't he spend the same kind of time in that 4 years rearranging the electoral system? He had plenty of time to do it. He had plenty of manpower to do it. He could have at least have carried out some kind of investigation into it. He didn't bother.
I know where you're coming from. Understand that. I mentioned that we had 2 points, which I've given. I'm going to give you a 3rd point. Maybe it's the most significant. The first day he stood up there saying, "I'm accepting this presidency very much. But my chief thing to do now is to drain the swamp." Now, what did he mean, drain the swamp?
It has a totally different meaning in England, that.
Well, it is, but he failed to drain the American swamp. Why did he fail? Because he couldn't get at all the judiciary, all the big tech companies, and all the newspapers who were against him.
Yeah, every right to be against him. The judiciary's got every right to be against him. Newspapers have got every right to be against him. The electorate have got every right to be against him. That's the problem with the darling Donald Trump. Everybody's against him, according to him. And now, if everybody was against me, I'd be looking at me. I wouldn't be saying that the press is against me because they're all liars. I'd be saying, what have I done to offend the press? Is there a way that I can make this work? I wouldn't be looking at all the judges and saying, they're all liars. They're all liars because they don't like me either. I wouldn't be saying things like the most startling revelation that's ever come out in any kind of presidential history. And why's nobody used a picture of my missus on the front page of their magazine? Now I've got you. Think, what? Maybe they don't like, maybe what you do with bullies and liars and narcissists, you starve them of air. You starve them of air. Now, why would the whole of the social media system put a caveat on anything that he puts out, saying that there is no proof of this, and what a terrible thing to happen to the world's most powerful man, that social media says, oh, no proof of this, and then also puts out a warning saying, Mr. Trump, you are no longer president. We have a new president. Now,
no, well, Leigh, you said that you have sinned grossly, Leigh, because you've actually said, whether you meant it or not, starve him of air. Now, come on, he's as much right to freedom of speech as anybody, and we both agree on that.
Of course he has, but anything that offers you freedom of speech has the right to censure what you're saying, because it's your place, their platform. And if they disagree so strongly with you that and bear in mind, this only happened after 3.5 years of giving him fair airtime. It was only when...
he's never had it. Listen, you've got a situation there with the dear old Donald, for whatever, for the good or the bad. He has done a lot of good. And I don't think another president would have got a vaccine in 10 months. But he did, whether it was bullying or whatever way you can say, it worked. But there again, that's for another day. There's a significant consensus at the moment saying that vaccine was in existence 10 months ago.
Well, who said it?
The scientists that are now involved, that are working with Pfizer.
I know what you're talking about. Sorry, yeah, I understand. But what happened? Yes, the vaccine was available 10 months ago, but it had to go through a lot of tests. That's why it didn't appear in Britain. It didn't appear in Britain. It didn't appear in any country in the world, because it had to go through tests. It had to be proven. And that again isn't that they did this to me on purpose with his little pouty mouth.
Well, there are two ways. There are two ways of proving, perhaps three. The old way is to take 10 years. That's the third one. The new way, because we've got an emergency, is what's happened. But there is another way, and that is when you get volunteers to say, I'll take a jab. There are two ways you can go from that jab. You can either take that person that's had the jab into a laboratory setting and make sure they catch it or don't catch it, or you can put them, as it's called, in the wild. Now, what that means is go and live your normal life and let's see if you get it. Now, that will take nearly a year to get all the data from that.
Of course it will.
Now, if you've got such an emergency, let's take a wartime situation. They didn't mess around in the World Wars, Leigh. They said, go and get a tank developed. Okay, we're going to lose 2 or 3 people doing it and taking a shortcut. But that's better than losing 300,000 people, as they've now lost in America. So the whole thing is going to be rethought. Hey, this is a crafty way of getting off Trump.
Are we getting off Trump? Yeah, you see, all right, let's just have a look at the Business Insider, very reputable magazine. They say categorically, and they're allowed their opinion, just as Trump is allowed his opinion, and why hasn't he changed his name either, the handling of the COVID-19 situation will go down as one of the worst disasters in US history. And who was at the helm? Mr. Trump.
Well, the buck stops with the president. The buck stops with Boris, I suppose.
Doesn't in his head, does it? It doesn't in his head. He passes it on. He says, oh, that's your fault, that's your fault, that's the media's fault, that's the court's fault, that's him lying, that's him. I've done nothing wrong, I'm going to play golf.
Let me say 2 words to you, mate. Status quo.
Don't fall out now.
No. Status quo. Now think about that.
It was a very good band. They only had 1 tune, but they were all right.
Yeah, but it went well, didn't it? So you've got a situation where the money people, the power people, the judges, the tech companies, big business want the status quo. They don't want their feathers ruffled. It's in their interest to stick together and keep or progress even to the new world order. Big is beautiful. No, it's not.
Isn't he one of the leaders of that kind of institution, though, as one of the world's richest, most bankrupt men? You know, isn't he there, right at the vanguard of not wanting the status quo to vanish, because that's what he is. He's a businessman, just like they are. And he moved into politics with no great background in it, and he was a TV star. He was a reality television star. For God's sake, how can that be?
But he ain't got the money of Bill Gates and co.
Well, no, because Bill Gates basically just went out and made his money. He got into a bit. I mean, he's been very, very rich as that nice Mr. Trump, though. He's how much is Trump Tower's worth? Is that? I think the last estimate I heard was I think it was 8. Is it 8 billion? Is it 8 billion that one house in his overall money is worth? Well, let's have another go. See what the explanation is for here. And I mean this in the most polite way possible. Why did he pardon all these liars and cheats? Why did he think, well, he's a liar, he's in prison for lying, he's in prison for being involved with the Russians fiddling with the election, he's in prison for lying to the Congress, let's pardon them. Why did he do that? Why didn't he pardon some of the people who are in jail wrongly for things they didn't commit? Or do we say that the courts got to put them in jail wrongly?
Leigh, he did worse than that. He condemned quite a few people to death. And I don't agree with what happened there.
Absolutely.
But again, let's get this in order. Which is worse? The daft American system, and it is daft, as you've pointed out, or the daft British system, where an outgoing PM will say, oh, you can go to the House of Lords, give us a quick buck here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as stupid, just as corrupt, both sides of the Atlantic.
I don't know really if that's corruption, because, Jimmy Savile became a Lord. And did Cyril Smith? I can't remember. But I think Cyril Smith did. Yes, but they weren't in jail. Certainly, they both should have been, but they weren't in jail. And actually, a lot of the allegations against them weren't generally publicly known. There's only people like me who knew about them and kicked up a fuss. But these people have been convicted of crimes against the state. And the great Donald says, yeah, they're all right. Yeah, they only made a bit up. They only insulted a few people. They only lied. What's wrong with lying? I've spent my whole career doing it. And so he let them out. It was bizarre.
Leigh, it's politics, you know. Now, I'm going to move on to an easy subject. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. The easy subject is the enigma of China. Oh, my giddy aunt. It's coming out, lots of stuff at the moment. The first thing that's coming out is one of the bigwigs of Zoom, our savior Zoom. One of the bigwigs is passing information back that he's getting from Zoom conversations direct to the Chinese. Now, as we know, and we mentioned last week, the inventor of Zoom was a Chinese person that came over to Silicon Valley. But that's a bit naughty. The other thing that's naughty...
Is he doing it? Is he doing it? Is he actually doing it? Is this true? You see, who's reported it? Who's actually given this information out? Was it the lying media? Was it the lying
mainstream
press?
Well, it was mainstream media. You may regard them.
Liars, fake news, no truth in it. Was it social media who followed it up and gave it out? Liars, cheats. Yeah, so how do we believe that? How do we know that's true?
Well, it was the mainstream media. They've got hold of it.
Probably it's true.
And so it's true. So not necessarily, it can be handled in various ways and massaged. I, by the way, am very intrigued with the difference between Reuters, who we generally regard very highly, and something that creeps out of America. Their own Reuters is not independent in the least.
Reuters is, well, it's a private news agency. It's been about for nearly 200 years. It's generally viewed as one of the most reliable news sources ever. Basically, because what it does is give you breaking news and stories which just basically give the facts. The embellishment of stories, they do it with features and stuff like that. They do magazine stuff, and that is perhaps more flowery. But that is left to the jobs of the people who take the Reuters feed. And Reuters is, there is an element to, for an organisation like Reuters, the Press Association, who I used to work for, and other organisations like that. And that problem is very simply, they are subject to the whims of the news, and they are subject to the whims of the people who validate or invalidate the news. And very often the job of a good journalist is to read between the lines of what is being said, what somebody with a vested interest is putting out there, what the police are putting out there, what governments are putting out there, and getting to something which represents the facts. And that very often is, well, is always a very difficult point of view for any working journalist to actually get to the bottom of what's going on. Reuters is very good.
Who do we believe, Leigh? We don't know. We're in the hands of these people that have got, as the Americans say, side. A favourite saying in America is you've got side. It's from pool and snooker, where you hit the ball on the side to make it spin round and dodge the ball in front of you. We do the same thing, but it's side. It's manufacturing things.
Reuters don't manufacture anything.
Oh no, I wasn't suggesting that.
No, like I say, the problem Reuters have, and any working age journalist has, is that everybody except the journalist has side. If you go to Trump for a quote on something, he has his side. If you go to Stumbling Joe for an opinion on the same subject, then he has his side. And it's what I said. The job of the journalist is to read in between the lines of what they are saying to get to the truth. Now, if you know somebody's a liar, you generally don't go to them. That's why, there was all this. You see, anyway, I'm not going back there. Carry on. I'm interested in what you have to say.
Listen, before we leave China, let me tell you a little story that goes on all over the world. Goes on in Spain, goes on in Britain, it goes all over. And we're not going to go with the Chinese. The Chinese have got long history. But
of disinformation.
Yes, that as well. But certainly in recent years, they've not covered themselves in glory. One or two of the other things they've not covered themselves in glory is the standard of goods they supply. Now, not the top techie goods, but I'm talking about the placky plastic goods that they supply. Now, I shall keep names secret in case I upset people, but bless them. Our kids send us things because we're remote here in the mountains of Andalusia or in the plains of Portugal, and with the virus we are completely remote. So bless them, they spend their hard-earned money to give us some nice presents. So who do they phone? And I'll mention one name now. It's posh. It's the Harrods of Spain. It's called El Corte Inglés. Yes. And it's you get posh things there. You walk in the door and you see rails and rails of frocks, and there ain't anything under. They're just for you, yeah. And frocks, and there's nought under €1,000. You know, it's one of those places. Designer, everything. So they go online to buy us some prezzies, and some of the prezzies for putting around the Christmas tree, lights and Pessebre. What's that in English? That's Catalan, is it? Oh my goodness me. Crib, that's the word. And it really looks nice with the lights around. So they buy us the lights. Leigh, they paid, that's €20 upwards for each individual of these things. And when you get them out of the box, wow, they look awful. El Corte Inglés must have paid, I guess, €0.50 for that to the Chinese.
Oh no!
Who am I calling out? Yes, I'm calling out the Chinese for producing absolute rubbish. But I'm calling out Corte Inglés for selling this, because what they've done is get a very clever photographer. They put this on their magazine, on their websites, and it looks gorgeous, but it's absolute tat. So beware, everybody. This could be the downside of Amazon. Amazon are better, because at least they allow you sometimes to comment and give it 5 stars, although that's been called into question, as we both know. But let the buyer beware when they say pretty photographs and it looks good, and that's taking advantage of people. That's not fair. And shame on the Harrods of Spain.
And shame on everybody. Yeah, shame on the world. No, I agree. I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. The problem with e-commerce is, take this site that's taken over the world, Wish. I love Wish. I can sit there for hours just plowing through Wish products, and you know, you get a £5,000 watch for €3. You get a £100,000 car for €10. You get everything. You get anything. And the same thing is, it looks absolutely wonderful. Now, with the modern technology surrounding the workings of photography, we can change the look of anything, and that is the wild west of the internet became the playground for con men and rip-off merchants. And it sounds like you've been stitched. At least if you went to Harrods in Britain, you might have to, this is true. I went to spend a penny at Harrods and it cost me £1. And as I came out, I wanted to have a spray of their aftershave thing, and that cost me £10. So, you know, but at least you know when you go in there, it looks like a big, stuffy old market stall, Harrods. And but it's fabulous. What a place. And you can test things, you can try things, you can look at things. No, buyer beware if you go on the internet, and yet there's very few places else to go now.
Well, yes, I mean, we have a go at UK quite a lot, don't we? But I tell you what, there's no perfect country.
Yuck.
Yuck, yes. There's no perfect country. At least if you have a bitch in England, you stand Scotland and Ireland and Wales.
Wales,
before I get into trouble again. Then you can go and get remedy through the courts, either the cheaper courts, the lower courts, or the posh courts, the expensive courts. But frankly, you've no chance of that in Spain. It takes years. So much money is involved. And this is why people here get away with things that they would never get away with in the UK. So again, let the buyer beware. Spain has not got everything right, even 90%, but the 10% is very wrong in Spain on some things.
Yeah, just a very, very quick one on buying in Spain, because as you know, we've now got a vested interest in this. About 4 years ago, in Spain, house prices didn't appear to be doing very well. You could get a quite a nice 3-bedroom apartment for, say, this is on the Costa del Sol, for say, it's not Costa Blanca. On the Costa Blanca, you could get an apartment for, say, 60-odd thousand. We had to go back to Britain, came back a few months later, and that same apartment or similar had gone up to 168,000 euros. And what we noticed as we looked round was that house prices, property prices in Spain were being hiked exponentially. The house prices had just gone mad. I mean, well, what's happened to the economy? How's the economy grown in Spain? Has everybody got a job now? Is everybody working? Is his education's brilliant and all rich? And no, you're quite right. You're quite right. No, it wasn't. What they'd done, they just said, let's put the house prices up. Now, we did a bit of research into this, and on the Costa Blanca, there were 3.5 million brand new empty houses. And they, at the back of them, there were millions of not so old, but usually British owned properties that people were trying to sell. So there was this absolute glut of properties for sale in Spain, and they upped the price. Do you know what happened? They never sold a house hardly. And now, yeah, now the prices are coming down. Now that is so damaging to the reputation and the veracity of a country like Spain, which is basically on its knees because of the lack of tourism and because of COVID.
Yeah, the general house price has fallen by 20% in Spain. It hasn't in the UK. Yeah, but that's over the whole country. Some areas affected worse than others.
Yeah, gone up 13% in Britain, according to the latest figures.
There again, that's just as false. That's Rashi doing his bit to stimulate the market. Anyway, listen, we have, Leigh, we have to go, but there are one or two little cherries on the cake we must mention. And the first one, we've got to go back to what we said about the charities last week, because I've seen another advert on dear old Sky News again. That seems to be where they get all the money from, because a lot of people watch Sky News are caring people. They're worried about things that happen, so they make themselves even more depressed by watching Sky News. And the adverts come on. Oh, I've seen a beauty. We talked about the donkey now last week, saying that he's got love in his heart now. He's changed because of the gift of people. It's tigers. There's a tiger advert. You must look in the tiger advert. This poor tiger's got his foot in a trap or barbed wire or something.
Yeah.
You know what they've done? They'll deny it, but I challenge them, because I've seen actresses and actors do this the whole time. They put, to make them cry, they put a little bit of water in the eye, corner of the eye, and there it comes straight down. And they've done it with a tiger. Come on, that's pathetic. And they slow-moed it, which is my hate.
Yeah, that's terrible. I suppose it's not actually doing the tiger any harm. It might do its dignity a bit of harm. It's sitting there going, I've just cried on camera. Yeah, but it's not. No, it's not.
It's not the truth, Leigh. It's not the truth.
No, of course it isn't. Tigers don't cry, do they?
Well, I've not seen one cry except that one.
I've never seen a tiger here. But yeah, I've seen the tigers here. Yeah, but yeah, go on then. What's your next one?
The other thing, of course, the next one, cherry on the cake, is broadband in Britain. Oh, they've let themselves down. I mean, you've only got to watch British television to see how bad broadband is when nobody's meeting. Oh, we'll go to Carlisle and, talk to this bloke, and the picture's wobbling and they have to pack up halfway through. Now, we are promised by our wonderful government by 2025, the 100% of the nation will be fibre, and it will be a miracle. They back down. That is terrible. They
Well, they only had 2 hours to do it.
Yeah, 85% they've come down to, but that's a fib, because if you go to the experts, what 85% really means is 70%. So 70% in another 4 and 5 years of the nation will be covered with fibre. And as we keep saying, why can 90-odd% of people in Portugal, a really poor country compared with Britain, and they've had that fibre for donkey's years? Name names. BT are at it again. It's shameful.
I couldn't agree more. I think we've discussed it in the past, my broadband here in the mountains of Slovakia is ludicrous. The only saving grace it's got is it's very cheap. I can't remember, it cost me €15 a month, but I can't get a more expensive package. I would pay €50 a month if I could get a more expensive package. Slovakia is stupid as far as broadband is concerned, because, as I've said before, I make no shame in saying it again, they came and they shrugged and said, you've got to have good broadband. So why? See, because there is a tree between us and the mast.
Well, the fact is, of course, and we've said this before, is that broadband now is an essential utility. It's like gas and water, and we've got to have it because everything works around it.
Of course it does. And here's the point. Here's the point. Right? What's important to us now? Broadband. Mobile telephones. Yeah? Lots of other things. Well, let's just take those two. What are the two most unreliable things you can have in your life? A mobile phone and broadband. And yet the whole of the world is based on this collapsing, this system which cannot hold its own, which will collapse on you at any stage in the middle of doing anything. And what's it made of? It's made of plastic. I don't know what that's got to do with it, but...
Well, listen, we're going out with something different today.
Yeah, right, what we're going out with?
I'm going to play a clip that is so convincing, it's wonderful. And we've got this out of California, but it's going worldwide.
Right.
Who do you believe? Believe no one. Just watch this clip. And I'm going to spoil it for you. I shouldn't say this. No, I won't. I'll come at the end, even without Leigh. I'll come in at the end. No, I'll let him watch it as well. I mean, he's going to be upset at this. But if you think the COVID is an invention, watch this.
When you think of the future, you likely envision the remarkable technologies that you've seen in comic books and films. You may begin to picture flying cars, trains driven by electromagnets, or household robots that will see to your every need. While modern scientists agree that many of these inventions are either unlikely or unnecessary, it may surprise you to learn what the future could actually hold. Imagine being able to share your thoughts with millions of people at once, simply by typing them on a keyboard and sending them through the air. Think of what life will be like when all of the many fixtures of an office, including a typewriter and an entire Rolodex, can fit within a device smaller than a loaf of bread. Consider the vacation plans you could make when a single trip on an aeroplane is all that's needed to visit anywhere on Earth. Yes, the future certainly looks bright, but it isn't without its darker sides. According to some predictions, obesity will likely run rampant, and political corruption will become so commonplace as to be accepted. People with nothing entertaining or informative to say will broadcast their demands for attention, and once beloved performers will become pushers of snake oil. Perhaps worst of all will be the emergence of a deadly and potentially devastating disease. Think of the last time that you contracted influenza. You were likely bedridden for days, having no appetite or desire to play games. Experts predict that by the year 2020, a new virus will rise, spreading from somewhere in Asia to the rest of the world. And with international travel being available to even the most common citizen, A sickness which would have been contained in years past will quickly spread to all corners of the globe.
Well, Mr. Banks, who do you believe? What do you believe? That is terrible. But there's lots worse than that on the net and in our media. Gaslighting, Leigh. We know what gaslighting is. And to those that don't, it's very simple. It goes back, I think it was the 1930s. Leigh will remember this, 1930s. And there was a film of a man that wanted to send his wife round the bend. He wanted to get out, cheaper than divorce. And he devised all sorts of things that shows that she would think she's going mad. And the favorite one, of course, because there was gaslighting in the house at that time, he kept turning the gaslighting down. And she said, oh, it's a bit dark in here. And he said, no, it's not. And this was a sort of very clever way of convincing her, oh, I am going a bit doolally. And gaslighting is going on like that all over the world. Perhaps Mr. Trump is suffering from gaslighting. Who do you believe? Are we being gaslighted, or are we being brainwashed, Leigh? It's the same thing.
I think unequivocally there is a strong element of brainwashing going on in this world. I think there always has been, and there certainly always will be now. But do you know who I actually believe for predictions about the future? And you can read these in recent weeks about them. The Simpsons. The Simpsons. Homer Simpson has predicted this pandemic in one of the shows, and they've made 12 more predictions. The Simpsons.
Oh my goodness, I've had enough. I'm going to stick to Star Trek. Right, that's it. See you next time.
See you next week. Cheers.